welcome to the GI Huddle. Today's interview is sponsored by Altenar, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, viewers, and welcome to the GI Huddle with Andreas Bardun, CEO of KTO Group. Andreas, thanks very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure.
It's our pleasure to have you on as well. I'm looking forward to speaking to you about the brand, about sports betting, and a great place to start, I think, is your career as a whole, because you've been in the industry a while. You're very much a pioneer of iGaming out in Malta. I wanted to start at the beginning, if that works for you, because I think yours is a storied career, and our viewers could definitely benefit from seeing what you learned along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the iGaming now over 20 years. I started with actually compiling odds. That was back in those days when we actually have to do our own research, our own mathematical calculations with just pen and papers. There was no kind of odds feed or anything like that. Very old school kind of traditional bookmaking. So that's kind of how I started getting into this business 20 years ago now, which is a very, very long time ago. What happened after that is that, that trading became, I think, more and more automated during the years. It was odds feeds, odds comparisons, there's APIs, data, technology, and everything. So I realized after a while, I needed to kind of change my directions. I needed to take my skills that I learned through trading and sports betting during all these years in trying to make it into the business side of things. So 10 years ago, I decided I needed to change my directions to focus more on business, on the sports betting side of things. So that's when I moved on to more on the business side of things. And so I've always been very, very passionate around everything that has to do with sports betting, if it's trading, marketing, product. So I always dibble my toes into all of the sides of the sports betting. So then 4 years ago, I got the opportunity to launch my own kind of brand, which is KTO. The reason I wanted to do that is because I felt the industry at the time was moving away from traditional gambling and tried to be a little bit more of a entertainment and going a little bit too far away from what the customers actually really want, because most of the customers, end of the day, especially in sports betting, they're very passionate about their football or about their tennis or basketball, whatever they might be into, and they just want to bet on it. And you need to give them that type of experience for them to be able to do that, rather than just trying to gamify sportsbook too much or trying to move away from traditional betting. So that's what I thought I wanted to do. So that's where we started 4 years ago, and trying to recreate a more down-to-earth, back to basic kind of sportsbook experience.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so as you say, huge on sports betting. The brand itself, I mean, do you offer other verticals in kind of online casino as well, or is it predominantly sportsbook?
Yes, so we're offering casino as well. The one thing I found very interesting right now is that because one of the challenges is always like, okay, how is sportsbook versus casino going to do? I think right now there's some brilliant products out there right now which mimics the cash out features of the sportsbook side of things. So it makes it a lot easier to cross-sell people into the casino side of the business and make it, I think, a more unified experience between sportsbook and casino. There is this natural step now with these kind of games, which simulates almost the cash out features, like could be something with airplanes that start taking off, etc. I'm not going to mention any brand names, but people would know which one I'm talking about.
Sure. So is that a case of the casino industry learning and taking from sportsbook?
I think so, because I think, my opinion is this, at least, it's a lot easier to recruit customer, building trust in your brand through the sportsbook. That is something, it's an easier way to enter a conversation talking about sportsbook. So when you're trying to recruit and build a brand, sportsbook is, for me, the natural way of doing it. Then you need, I think the casino side needed to kind of say, rather than think of themselves as a standalone unit somewhere else, how can we build the bridges to trying to make these customers into the casino? And I think some of these games have enabled that, and we have seen a massive crossover from sportsbook into the casino thanks to these games. So I think that's something that the casino side had done really well over the last couple of years to develop this type of games.
Mm-hmm. And those are, would you consider those to be the two absolutely strongest offerings? I mean, what about other poker, other verticals like poker? I suppose there's bingo, but not as popular. Is it very much that sportsbook and casino are the big two for you?
Yeah, no, these are the big two. We do not currently offer poker. And I'm an old poker player, so I love poker myself. But the reason for that, I feel like poker is kind of a little bit of a dying vertical. Now I'm probably stepping on some toes, but we feel that right now that for us, where we are, it's not really worth it at this point in time. That might be something is changing that could happen. We're more looking into see how we can expand maybe through some lottery games, which seem to be quite popular, especially in the areas that we're in. So we're looking right now to see if we can add lottery as a vertical for us in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you're here to give your opinion, so if that's kind of your projections on poker, that's it's better to kind of hear that to create that discussion to be honest about it. In terms of obviously we've talked verticals. In terms of markets and areas, I mean, you've got offices in kind of multiple locations. What markets do you work in, and which are your biggest markets?
Okay, the main market for us right now, where most of our focus is on right now, is the Latin American market, and especially Brazil. We are really growing so fast in the Brazilian market, and it's moving towards a regulation right now in Brazil, which we are very excited about. And that is our main goal right now, is to secure the Brazilian license as soon as it's out. Brazil has been a major success for us, and we are growing in a rate which I could never foresee that any brand could actually grow in. So it's very excited. I'm really excited about the Brazilian market. It's really like we found our pearl in a sense. And what I like about the Brazilian market as well is that it reminds me a lot on how I started in early 2000s in Europe. There are little bit the knowledge around a lot of the customers are 10-15 years behind the European market. So there's also this kind of educational piece us as a brand can still work on this market, so that I find very exciting that we can help explaining sportsbook, how everything is working and so on. I think that is a great opportunity. Plus we know the direction, what's going to happen, because it's going to mirror what's going to happen in Europe. So I can see a lot of the similarities. So that's what I find very fascinated. And I can put all my years experience in sportsbook into practice by knowing what's going to happen with this type of markets in the future.
It's a question I've asked a couple of people recently, just how much, because obviously Brazil, as you mentioned there, kind of a jewel in the crown, a lot of discussion about it. Just how big can it be on a global scale? We know it has potential. Can it be right up there among the kind of biggest countries in the world?
So I have seen some studies where people suggestion it will be, if it regulates now, it will be the second largest regulated market. If that's in the size of bets or size of customers, that can be discussed. But it will definitely be a top 5 regulated market in the world. And we have to consider the size of Brazil. It's absolute massive. It's also, Brazil, as I always say, is not a country, it's a continent. It's so big, and it's so many people, and it's so many varieties in the country. It has huge potential. Just the scale of it, it's hard to compete with. Obviously, it can never compete with America, but it can compete with definitely with the bigger European markets.
You mentioned kind of following the trajectory of the European market. Does that also mean that it could maybe learn some lessons and kind of avoid maybe some of the growing pains that old markets have had in the past?
I think so, for sure. I think that's then I guess the major thing I'm still hopeful for is to trying to not over-regulate things. Still keep it But at the same time, you don't want to end up in a situation where I think one of the past mistakes European had done was it was at one point you could do anything. Marketing was just too much. And then what happens after that? The overreactions, nothing is allowed anymore. So I think, and I'm hopeful for that, we can go a more moderate way on actually how to work with the gambling market. So it doesn't go to those extremes where you're allowed to do everything and then you're not allowed to do anything. We need to find a nice balance. And that's what I'm really hopeful for, and think I'm being positive about that it can be achieved.
Balance is a great word and a great point, because I wanted to ask you actually, when it comes to the sports betting industry and as you say, marketing especially, it's interesting to note kind of what's going on maybe in New York at the moment and in America, heavy marketing, a lot of marketing, you know, in terms of learning the lessons of Europe. It remains to be seen, you know, whether those lessons are being heeded just at the moment with kind of the mobile market. But in terms of the balance you mentioned, will the industry ever find that sort of, not perfect because nothing's ever perfect, but the balance between ultimately responsible gambling and not over marketing and protecting the player, but ultimately also, you know, maximizing lifetime player value, because, you know, it is a business at the end of the day?
I think the one thing as well, many times, unfortunately, I think as well, people are looking at this business as a short-term fix. We need to get all the customers at any point, at any price, right now, rather than building a long-term trust. And the problem is it's so expensive. If you go to the American market, to enter the American market, it's so expensive. You almost need to be listed on some stock markets. So you have some reports that you need to show on a quarterly basis to be able to justify what you're doing. So it's sometimes get into a vicious cycle that you have to chase certain KPIs to be able to show to the shareholders that the company is doing good, etc. And I think that could be harmful, because right now you see a lot of companies all of a sudden just stops marketing or fold even in America right now, because it was just that race. Everyone wanted all the customers one day. We have been doing it in a little bit different way. Obviously, we're not in the American market, so I cannot really compare there, but trying to build a long-term trust and build a community. I trying to build a long-term community instead. It takes a bit longer, but on the other hand, you have a very high conversion rate of the customers that's coming in. And then we're really trying to focus on retaining the customers that we're having. I think retention is something is completely overlooked. Everyone speaks about it, but no, most of them don't know how to do retention. That is my very harsh statement to the industry.
I mean, it's an interesting kind of note. Obviously, you have, I mean, I guess an example to that point is in these financial reports, new depositing customers are often, and first-time depositors are often referenced quite heavily. And as you say, maybe existing customers and retention, that's not given as much priority.
Yeah, we always focus on what we call returning depositing customers. That is our main KPI. It's not how many new customers. Yes, it's important, of course, you have to look into what you're acquiring, but we're trying to really look at returning depositing customers, because that means that they are giving us the trust, they try the product, and they're actually returning. They're not there just to test us and then don't like us, or just to find a bonus and leave. So for us, it's more important to see how many customers are actually returning and for how long time. We always look at the cohorts, see how long the lifetime of the players. So we're looking at a much more long-term view on how we can hold the customers. The good thing is that we are a private company, so we don't need to worry about shareholders asking us about, as you said, why certain KPIs might not be as high as others. Or stuff like that, but we are building it in a much different ways, and it's really paying off right now. It took us 2 years to get to that point, but right now it's just insane, the growth that we're having just by using that type of strategy.
I guess that potentially raises a question of maybe staying private versus going public, but I don't think we can answer that necessarily right here, right now. That's a very ongoing issue. In terms of something that you can kind of answer, kind of in terms of a direct question, retaining players and keeping them on board, obviously your offering, your product is central to that. And I know you work with Altenar on your sportsbook. What's it like working with them, and how would you describe kind of how that partnership is going?
Okay, the number one thing. So I have a long-term relationship with Altenar, with one of the founders of Altenar. So I already knew from the beginning that these are good people, and that's very important for me. When you work with someone, you need to trust the people that you're working with. Trust is number one thing. That he was very transparent in what they at the time, what they were doing good and what they're not doing good at. And that is very important, because when you go to most partners, they're going to tell you we are good at everything, and then it's not true. It's much better to work with a partner to say, listen, this is our strength, this is our weaknesses. So then we can focus on promoting the strengths, and we can also try to figure out how we can help each other in solving the weaknesses. And just in the years we've been working together, there's been so much improvements, because we really work together on the roadmap on how to fix stuff. And the amount of things they managed to deliver in that period is amazing. So such a nice personal experience that we're having with them, that we can sit down and discuss in a transparent way, which is very unique in this business, which I love.
So given that offering and the product that you have with Altenar, given everything you've discussed so far about retention and the growth, especially in Latin America, if we look to the future, what are you kind of seeing on your roadmap over the next couple of years?
On what we, from a product perspective, with Altenar, you mean?
Yes and no. More generally, I'd say as well. So kind of where you maybe see the growth, I can imagine that's basically Latin America, as you say, you're already seeing heavy growth. But what's kind of, if you're looking ahead, where is everything going?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the market, we still have only scratched the surface in Brazil. And the way we want to do here is one of the major things. This is actually one thing I can bring up, that we're actually also working with our provider, Altenar in this case, that we want to kind of replicate some of the things that was very successful in the UK market with request a bet and stuff like this. Because one thing we realized when we entered the Brazilian market, no one is really doing anything for the Brazilian market. Everything is kind of compiled from Europe with a Eurocentric point of view. All the sports betting companies or trading houses and stuff like that is always based in Europe almost. So there was a very Eurocentric vision. So now the one thing we spoke with Altenar about was like, okay, how can we make sure that KTO in Brazil becomes a Brazilian sports book? So we have a vision together by creating a lot of this kind of request a bet and different type of markets that only Brazilian customers would kind of really like, and to be extremely local and relevant to the market. And I think that's really the key for us. And Altenar has been very nice by, we have very high demands. So they've been very, very nice to help us to deliver this. So that's the one thing I'm really looking forward to take it to the next level.
Sure, yeah. So certainly that localization and that personalization. A final question from me, Andreas, a more lighthearted one. Who do you think is going to win the World Cup? And please only say Brazil if you genuinely believe it, and not just because it's a key market for you.
I cannot, I'm Swedish. I cannot say Sweden because we're out. No, but I really hope it's not Brazil, because it will be a problem, because everyone will be betting on Brazil.
Sure.
But unfortunately, I really think it's Brazil, unfortunately.
Okay.
Like, yeah, that's good for all the employees. That's for our Brazilian employees, good for all our customers. But it might be a bit expensive if Brazil wins. So I will be rooting for every team outside Brazil. But unfortunately, I really think Brazil has one of the better chance to win the World Cup. So I would say Brazil.
Well, all to play for. Obviously, I have high hopes for England, and we genuinely, actually, last couple of tournaments have a chance, but our hearts are usually broken by the end of the tournament.
Yeah, anyway, as long as Iceland is not in it, you're fine.
Absolutely.
Well, no, but Andreas, you have a good chance as well. England has a very good chance as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you about the sports betting industry.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.